Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to SSCAIT After Dark. I'll be your resident AI DJ, Chobo Swaggins, aka Jealous from Team Liquid, bringing you the hottest replay hits from the BWAI world with the smoothest of macros and the silky slickest of micros. Okay, just kidding, but it is dummy late where I live, and I found out a bit too late that I have somewhere to be tomorrow morning, so I will try to cast this in a way that doesn't disturb anyone else in the house. Today we are going to go over some recommended replays from the SSCAIT Discord, the link for which you can find in the description below. We officially caught up with our queue of recommended replays recently, so just about everything you will see from this point going forward will be fresh games from the most up-to-date public versions of the AIs in question. Our first game is going to be Stardust, right here, as the green Protoss on the top right of La Mancha, against Dragon at the bottom left here as the yellow Terran, who is already sending out 3 SCVs forward at 9 supply, quite the unusual opening. Having done a sneaky cheese that we will see again here. You might remember this from last week when there was a 3 barracks proxy. So here we'll see how it's going to work against the reigning AI champ. So Stardust up here, let's speed up a little bit, is the green Protoss and is likely completely unaware of what's coming to it in this situation. So the triple SCVs, they're not just good for building 3 barracks, they're also good for triple scouting as well. And we saw that it barely caught a glimpse of probably that warping gateway here. I'm not sure if even Stardust would have been able to see that, because I believe warping gateways have very low vision, definitely less than the finalized building itself. So the SCV must have seen the gateway, but the gateway did not necessarily see the SCV, and we actually don't have a we actually do have a scout from Stardust that should know that something's up. It should recognize that there's a proxy, as we learned from last week. Well, actually no, the week before. Sorry. From my match against Stardust, there is detection of proxies, and that's why I did go for that 2 gateways before cybernetics with the Zealots first. And let's see how the micro turns out. These Zealots did a good job of picking off that SCV. The Marines are doing a good job of running away. Another SCV goes down. Excuse me. Third barracks is complete now, though, and this SCV should go down as well. Let's see if the Marines can dance their way around the Zealots. The Zealots are taking a lot of hits, actually. Let's take a look at the HPs. One of them is very low. The shields are down on most of them. Marines are dancing. This is a situation where, as a human, I would definitely consider adding cannons and a forge, or at least a shield battery. In this case, Stardust is opting to continue with its planned production of Dragoons. Unfortunately, it's not going to work out in its favor. So many Marines now available and dancing so well against these Zealots. Zealots are incredibly hard to control. I'm sorry. Well, Zealots are hard to control against Marines when the Marines are being controlled like this. Marines are notorious for having a great cost benefit to the micro that they do. So when you're a high level player, the Marines feel OP. When you're a low level player, the Marines feel very weak. In this case, with the micro that we've seen from Dragon, Marines are definitely on the OP side of things here, as they've completely eliminated basically all of the economy of Stardust here, and Dragon is most definitely going to win this game, so I'm just going to speed it up for the cleanup. Interesting to me that the Marines decided to go back home here. I guess maybe they were thinking about setting up a defensive situation for themselves. They're taking out this probe as well. Maybe looking to go into that bunker, but yeah, this game it's a wrap. It's over. I think maybe Dragon has found a way to abuse at least this version of Stardust, which again is going to be a different version from the one that I played a couple weeks ago. Moving on to the next game, it's I hope that doesn't happen again. It's monster versus a human, and we should be looking for the Dark Swarm usage here. Now, this human player is playing on the Snail ladder, the link for which you will be able to find in the description below. This is a ladder that allows you to play against some of the top AIs, of which you frequently see featured on this program, SSCIT report. The human player spawning again on La Mancha as at the top right as the blue Terran, and the AI in this case is Monster. We were told that by the replay submitter, spawning at the bottom right of La Mancha as the white Zerg. Now, of course, it's going to take some time for us to get to the point where we see Dark Swarms, but it's going to be interesting to see how the early game plays out. The first depot is placed behind the middle line, which is an interesting choice. I've seen and for example, Scan likes to block the back of the mineral line in case there are Zerglings. Early Zergling pressure can become very annoying when they're capable of running around the mineral line. So the first depot often goes in this position, even when the barracks, I'm sorry, even when the command center is in such a position relative to the minerals, where the first depot would be beneficial to place here. What happens in those situations is that the SCV, when it spawns, instead of spawning here, it'll spawn closer to the minerals, but placing the first depot over here does help mitigate any early game damage that is done by the Zerg opponent. Both the human and the AI are scouting, and the anonymous AI monster should have a pretty good idea of where the human is now, having seen that SCV. The SCV, in turn, potentially is still relying on the knowledge that humans tend to scout a little bit later than AI, so might have assumed that the Zerg player would be here, but in fact the Zerg is over here, and it does look like a hatchery first opening from the monster AI. The response from the human, very nicely done, goes for a command center early on. It actually was a little bit blind. Well, human was a little bit blind and did that with a slight risk to it. The bunker position I'm not too crazy about as well. It's very far away from the ramp. It's not likely to take out very many Zerglings if a run by were to happen. Bunker positioning probably somewhere around here would have been more ideal, maybe over here, to help bolster any turrets later in the game. In the meantime, we do see one sunken colony from monster here. This is a good placement. It doesn't cover the mineral line exactly, but it does prevent any run-bys if it was indeed a mech opening, and we actually are seeing a 1 Rax 2 Fag opening after the expansion has gone down. So it's going to be interesting to see. There is going to be 1 Vulture at least coming out first. There doesn't seem to be any interest in making an early add-on though, which is something that you sometimes see if you see more of an all-in type play from the Terran player. They might get the add-on to add speed or maybe get mines early on in order to control more space. The first Zergling goes down, and it is aware that it's going to be a mech opening now because of the fact that they did see the Vulture there. The sunken colony doing a great job actually of covering everything. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm realizing that there's not much room for the Vulture to get around this mineral line in any way, so this sunken is actually quite perfectly placed on this map. In the meantime, we are seeing a 3-hatch Muta build. The Spire just now finishing at 620. It's just about the time that you normally would want to see, with the Mutalisks probably arriving a little bit after 7:15ish. The human player putting down the turrets at a decent timing. I'm not sure if it's going to be quite in time. The Mutas look like they are gathering up, not entirely though. It's taking a little bit longer than you would have expected, and you don't really need to guide the drone to this expansion. Definitely slowing down itself here, and the turrets are up in time as a result. Mass Goliath build looks to be the play here from 3 factories. I imagine that we have range spinning here. Let's take a look at that. Yep, looks like, actually, yep, that is the range upgrade. No, no, that's the siege upgrade, actually. Quite early in this situation. You normally wouldn't see it this early, but perhaps it is a good timing considering the fact that the Lurker upgrade is coming in. Lurkers, of course, would fare pretty well defensively here, but you also have to consider the fact, well, whoa, okay, I guess maybe there was a supply block. Yeah, 67 and 68 now. Want to be building depots more than you want to be killing SCVs. In fact, the 2 depots that the human added were quite late after that fact. SCV going out now, I don't think it's an opportune moment to be expanding right now, but it might be possible, given the fact that AI might not be aware of it. But nope, here is the Zergling right away catching that expansion attempt and going to be running away from the Goliaths here. Going to be annoying with it, but it does run back a little bit prematurely. The Mutalisks are stalking the area. The Goliaths are here to defend, and a lot of Zerglings made. You normally wouldn't make Zerglings against a mech opening of this nature, but it is possible to hit before there is a critical mass of Goliaths if you go in with the Mutas and Zerglings in concert at the same time. Adding turrets before the command center. In fact, I think this might actually be somewhat blocking the command center position. The run-in was attempted, but perhaps the bridge affecting the engagement there. Monster not doing a great job of that engagement, and the Zergling investment here has been wasted. Siege mode has completed. We are seeing Lurkers and Hydras out on the map. +1 air, +1 ground, I'm sorry, +1 weapons, +1 mech armor on the way now. +1 attack for ground melee units is an interesting choice. Normally you would not see Zergling Mutalisks at this stage of the game. One of the traditional responses to mech is the Hydra Muta play, but it seems to be working out a little bit for Monster. Actually, no, I take that back. There's been mostly just Zerglings dying and not a lot of anything else. Lurkers, of course, benefit from the range upgrade, and wow, that is a very fast hive timing and very fast swarm timing. 11 minutes 40 seconds into the game with swarm. That is a great timing to hit, and it's going to absolutely wreak havoc on the Terran attempts at taking the third here. The command center is up, but there's no potential to transfer SCVs, so far this is a sunk cost for the Terran, unable to gain anything from this position. With the ominous pressure coming in, Dark Swarm's behind that. I don't think that the Terran is going to be able to actually hold on to this base, and the Terran agrees when he lifts the command center, flies away. The Mutalisks are here though. It would be interesting to see if they would try to take out the command center, but no. Now the Goliaths tried to walk their way around, but unfortunately it's not going to work out for them. They do get caught out by the Zerglings, which are on the way to, which already have the adrenaline upgrade, and they're getting +2 soon as well. And this is one of the downfalls of mech, especially if you don't get a timing push off. This is what can happen to you. Mech is notoriously weak against Dark Swarm usage, and Monster putting on a clinic here, showing us the possibilities of how well utilized Dark Swarm can concert with Zerglings, which are, like I mentioned earlier, not really the typical option that people go for in the mid game. Now they are proving themselves to be incredibly valuable against the Terran. The Terran doesn't even have detection. Part of the other weakness of going mech against Zerg is the fact that you don't have enough gas to get that science vessel out in time for detection and for irradiates against the Defilers. And now, if we're looking at it, there's only 38 workers for the human. The natural is not mining, and the main is getting close to mined out. So this is a tough situation to be in for the human player, who even added Valkyries before the vessel. Vessel finally out now. Looks like the Defiler is kind of trapped back there. I don't think it's capable of consuming. There are more Defilers on the front of the battlefield, and it looks like another push in is going to be coming. The siege tanks do take out the Lurker before it burrows, at least one of them. There is still one more. Burrowed units under Swarm do not take damage, and as we're seeing here, the Lurker is actually not getting hit at all, not taking any damage. And the siege tanks, by focusing on this Lurker, have actually neglected to kill the rest of the units that are available. The natural still is unable to mine right now. Another Dark Swarm is going to cover this Lurker just barely. Very nicely done by Monster here, and it should be noted that behind this, that Monster has taken at least its half of the map, or maybe about a third of it. Not yet expanding here, but the constant stream of Zerglings. Let's look at the production tab. Yeah, look at this macro coming out of the Zerg player. The human player floating 3,000 minerals, trying to basically stabilize. Definitely fell apart on the macro side of things quite a bit, and now even with this amount of siege tanks offering splash damage and holding off the Zerglings, it's the Lurkers under the Swarm that are proving to be the most damaging part of this, and the human looks like it's going to mine out off of one base. Down to 17 workers now. The expansion is lifted, the command center is burning, and it does manage to stabilize for now, but the next push could be the fatal one. Looks like there's a bit of a hectic situation going on in the in the expansion of Monster here. The Zerglings were waiting, I guess, for the appropriate amount of army. Looks like there is an interesting approach to pathing here. It looks like it's moving towards the middle of the map, and maybe it's just playing some territorial play here. Quite puzzled by this army movement from Monster. This is not really a critical area to be using at the time. However, it should be noted that it does have good awareness and information about the other bases on the map, as Monster is wont to do. Irradiates going down now on the remaining Mutalisks here, but this number of Zergling, Lurker, and Defilers, 5 Defilers here, I imagine all of them are capable of casting swarms, and there are plenty of Scourge as well for the science vessels. There are 4 vessels here. It's going to be risky to move in like that. The Scourge were not in there with the army, but a couple of Irradiates is not enough to prevent the Dark Swarms from coming forward. And again, even with this number of siege tanks, if you don't have Irradiates or a way of dealing with the Lurkers here, you're gonna have a bad time. This is why you would normally see vultures and mines at this stage of the game, using that to control the map. But I believe the Terran had fallen behind quite early on into this game because of the fact that it went for a third base instead of a timing push off of two bases. We've seen a number of effective two-base mech pushes in TVZ over the past couple of years. A lot of them are very Goliath heavy, as we saw the opening of the humans play here, but unfortunately missing that window, not being able to capitalize off of a third base, and then being faced with monsters really fast, consume and swarm play. The human player is not able to really get back into this game, I feel, and even the natural is basically mined out. 16 workers to 69, 200 supply against 87. Even with this number of siege tanks, I don't see the human holding on much longer. And yeah, the irradiates did do a lot of work, but all of the vessels go down, and now you certainly have to feel bad for the human player here who's just going to get demolished. Not enough Goliaths to provide anti-air support. The Valkyrie is low in number, and the Mutalisks are here to take out the tanks. If we look at the upgrades, actually, it was mostly ground upgrades that were in. There was no air upgrades here, so not a heavy investment into air from Monster, even though we had seen that before, especially in ZVT, where it would go for the double Spire builds that would allow it to get double upgrades. In this case, preferring to go for the early Swarm build, showing the power of this Hive Tech technology, and that's something that we rarely see in the AI world, something that is talked about a lot in the Discord, which again you can find the link for in the description below, is the fact that focusing on stuff like Hive play, Defiler play, doesn't make all that much sense, at least when you're starting out designing an AI, because most games are decided before that. But if you have a competent AI that will make it to that end game situation, it does behoove you to learn more about how to utilize swarms, and in this case we saw some great swarm usage, so very well done by Monster there, and the creator Lines Power, congratulations on, yeah, just a fantastic piece of work. Absolutely dismantled this Terran. Moving on to the next game, and let me just make sure, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure that I wouldn't be popping up still the description that I wrote. So this was advertised to us as a great game by Antigua Urion, the person who hosted the AIST tournament a couple weeks ago and the months prior. Here at 12 o'clock we have Andrew Smith, the Purple Protoss on Destination, and at 6 o'clock we have Xiaoyi COG 2019, that of course referring to the year of the build that we are seeing on our screens right now. The depot placement, the first one, is what I was referencing in the previous game. When you place your depot here, your first SCV pops out on this side, of course making it a little bit more efficient to mine with, and I love the fact that the first thing it does is it scouts for a potential proxy from the Protoss. This map was actually quite infamous for its proxy potential, because of the fact that it's so big in the main, and it's something that you would normally not anticipate, but on two-player maps, when you know where your opponent is located, it's quite easy to trick them that way, because you know where to you know where they are, so you can place the buildings intelligently. You can't just blindly build gateways on other maps inside a person's main, because you might not find them. But in this case, we're not seeing anything too suspicious from either player. Andrew Smith going for the fast cybernetics core, no zealot before that. In the meantime, we see Xiaoyi COG. It's known for pressuring with its first few Marines. It seems to just keep producing Marines just to, I guess, occupy the enemy. And in this case, considering the fact that the Protoss does not have a Zealot, there is a potential to do a little bit of damage at least. Another probe coming out, interestingly enough, and the Marine was chasing it for a little bit, but the probe decides not to, the Marine decides not to pursue. The probe, of course, carrying gas, which is something that we've quite interestingly seen from a number of AIs here. The Dragoon looks to be poised to position itself defensively. We actually have another probe with gas running around here. Quite interesting to see that as well. The probe is being used to attack the Marines, and the Dragoons looks, maybe it's distracted by the SCV. A probe goes down there on the ramp, so this is already a pretty big gain for Xiaoyi, who is just buying itself time to get to the mech portion of its tech tree. It does open with a vulture first, which I don't think is necessary, I guess. Well, it's actually 2 vultures. Normally against 3 Dragoons you would not want to have vultures out on the map, especially without upgrades, no mines or speed in yet, because of the fact that there's no add-on for Xiaoyi. Add-on now coming up, but it's going to be too late to hold off against Andrew Smith here. The Dragoons are out in number. I believe they already do have range, actually. Yeah, there we go. There is range. The bunker is going to be repairable, and this is a great map for defensive positions, but one vulture already down. This one's going to go down as well. That means that there's going to be less mines later, which is quite crucial in this matchup. One vulture has made its way around. It snuck earlier out, but the Dragoon spots and it's going to apply pressure there. The Vulture looks like it was only really interested in making sure that the opponent doesn't expand. Actually, the Vulture stays alive. The Dragoon kind of just ignored it. Lots of minerals being lost here, and more workers with gas in their hands running out here. This Dragoon wandered a little bit too close to the bunker, not quite perfect placement. The siege tank now is going to be able to start hammering down on the Dragoons as well, but there's been a lot of lost mining time here, and also a lot of money spent on repairs because the siege tank was delayed by the lateness of the add-on here. Siege tank is going to keep dancing here. I don't see... Do we have siege mode on the way yet? No, it's actually stim. Quite interesting choice. Normally in this position you would probably prefer to go for range first, because then the bunker would be able to outrange the Dragoons. However, that would also kind of give away your strategy, so that's going to depend on whether or not Andrew Smith had coded that into its understanding, and it doesn't seem to be the case, because the Dragoons aren't being taken down one by this siege tank here. Normally you would want to run away at that point, or at least try to micro down the tank by doing a dive in, waiting for it to overcommit. And again, I'm getting that weird pop-up on the bottom, sorry about that. Vulture is still alive here. It's still patrolling the bases, making sure that the Protoss does not expand again. Protoss did take its natural not too long ago. The Terran natural is up as well, but there hasn't been any transfer of SCVs. The medic here has been repairing SCVs, well, healing SCVs. It seems it's kind of interesting that it can do that. Two Zealots run in now. That's an interesting choice. Sieging up also maybe was not the right play against the Zealots running in on top of you, but we have a one medic, one Marine, make that two Marine offensive, looks like here. Going to be applying pressure to Andrew Smith. Andrew Smith does have quite a number of Zealots now out. Normally against M&M you would want to go for Dragoons and start getting your plus upgrades, because if the Terran has an armor upgrade advantage over your attack upgrade, it takes an extra hit from Dragoons to kill any Marine or Medic. So in this case I feel that maybe Zealots were not the ideal play, and we actually see them taking down two Medics there, which is not nothing. They are going to run on top of the siege tanks here. This sieged up tank is going to stay alive though, and repairs are coming in on it. Very nicely done there by Xiaoyi. Third base, I see it in the corner there for the Protoss player, and they did mine out this back mineral, which is an interesting choice, and I'm actually quite surprised that it's something that AI do at an appropriate time and then do it and get their expansion up. So this is definitely great coding from Andrew Smith here. Dragoons and Zealots still trying to defend this expansion. A little bit of a piecemeal offensive here by Xiaoyi, but Andrew Smith has lost a lot of units leading up to this. There's now the Wraiths that we see from Xiaoyi quite often, and the Zealots are going to actually start pushing back the Marine Medics. The Mines, they're possibly doing more damage to the Terran than they did to the Protoss. They did take down some Zealots, but also took down most of the Marine Medics as well. Vulture is trying to micro down these Zealots, and these Zealots should have had speed a minute ago, to be honest with you. Fourth base now coming up for Andrew Smith, and Science Facility already up for the Terran player, but I don't see... Oh, there it is. There is the upgrades coming in for the +1 mech attack. +1 Protoss attack is on the way as well, and interestingly enough, it looks like it's going for the Templar Storm upgrade. The fast vessel timing should be helpful with the EMP if we are getting that. Yes, it looks like EMP is being researched, but not in time. Storm is coming in. Storm hitting the Marines and Medics. That's very nice. That is what you want to do against M&M play, and we saw in the past that, you know, AI like Stardust, for example, they don't really have a storming mechanism in place. Double storming here, not really efficient. For those of you that don't know, casting two storms in one place, you still only get the damage from one of those storms. So you kind of want to, what's the word for it? I guess intersperse works. Yeah, intersperse your storms so that they're usually never stacked on top of each other. However, the push is on. Not a lot of support for these tanks. Marines and Medics have gone down in numbers thanks to the storms, and now a flank on both sides with the beautiful storm on top of these supporting Vultures takes the tanks down, and now this push has been stalled out. The Wraiths are cloaked here, but Wraiths don't do all that much damage. there should be an observer coming at some point soon, though we do already have the observatory. Let's look at the production tab. Yep, observers are on the way. And let's look at the engagements here. Another storm here is going to take down their supporting M&M army, and this is one of the things that you absolutely don't want to do as Terran, which is kind of like trickle out your army when you're going for biomech. You really want a concrete timing with a significant number of both bio and siege tanks, otherwise you're going to continuously lose your army to the superior Protoss forces because of the fact that they have so much HP. But in this case, actually, it really worked out, and I think the storm might have contributed to the death of those zealots as well. The defensive matrix, interestingly enough, does protect against storm to some degree, and Xiaoyi is starting to, maintain control of a certain area of the map using the mines and the siege tanks, and of course the D matrix here as well. Valkyrie goes down without having contributed much, but in this case now finally Andrew Smith does poke through, and this bunker is empty, so it's not contributing to any complications in terms of the decision making from Andrew Smith. Mines now being laid defensively and natural. This is kind of a risky position to be doing so, though. Sieged up siege tanks here could die to a bunch of zealots, but the production has been consistent from both players. The vultures are doing a good job of holding on, and the bridges are actually quite easy to hold for Terran as well because of the fact that there's not that much surface area there. The question is going to come in if there's going to be enough support here to continue this push. It looks like so far, yes. Let me move the screen a little bit more. A lot of army has gone down for Andrew Smith recently, and Xiaoyi is ahead in army, but again, the zealots are getting on top of the siege tanks. A lot of siege tanks going down. They're kind of the backbone of the Terran army. You can't afford to lose too many of them. Now we actually have an Arbiter out, but with the Vessel and the Wraiths, and actually a Valkyrie as well, this Arbiter should not be able to do all that much. Looks like it doesn't have energy to do anything yet. I'm kind of surprised to see it out here all by its lonesome, not really contributing much. Let's look back at the action here. The Terran army is being kept inside the natural here, despite having 4 bases. Protoss is also on 4 bases and has been for a while. So it's just been a constant battle, almost a tug-of-war for position here on this map. And yeah, I'm gonna take a sip and we can view the battle. I'm sure you guys are following along with what's gonna happen, so give me just one moment. Excuse me. So, 2 Arbiters now on the field. Somehow that one Arbiter did manage to survive, and I don't think it cast Recall, but it probably did get EMP'd. Sorry about that. That might be the reason why it doesn't have any energy. Now, one of the Arbiters does go down. This one is getting lower in health as well, and again, it's kind of out by itself, and that contributes to it falling. That's a lot of gas and tech loss, a lot of opportunity cost as well, but now we saw the dangers of what happens when zealots run on those mines. A lot of friendly fire happens, units die. And this is a very defensive position to put your siege tanks. I mean, this is a great position to put your siege tanks, but it's also just kind of indicative of how much on the back foot in terms of map position Xiaoyi is. However, it should be noted that Andrew Smith has been capitalizing on the advantage that it's had on the map, but Xiaoyi hasn't been limited from expanding as well, so it's become a split map scenario. And conventional wisdom says that a split map scenario on this map does benefit the Terran. They are more cost effective regularly. So we haven't seen that all too much in this game, but I mean, if we're comparing army supplies 80 to 25 in this case, I'm actually quite surprised, wondering where all that army is, and now that explanation has been provided to us here, we see that the army is trapped somehow inside the main base of Xiaoyi, not being able to navigate this ramp quite effectively. Maybe it's because of the fact that it's a ramp that did not come with the standard StarCraft package. Maybe there is a little bit of a, how should I say, complications there as a result. War probes out on the map. We do see nice scans and Arbiter coverage, but there's really just not all that much army for Andrew Smith. Templar does go down as well, and it looks like Xiaoyi is finally gathering its forces up together for a big push. But it doesn't seem to be all that much here. This does not look like 83 supply of army to me. Must be a lot, because a lot of it is trapped in this hole here. The SCVs are preventing it from leaving. That's quite interesting, actually. To be fair, we've even seen pro gamers like Jadong and Flash either mess up their rally points or forget to bring their army out or trap their army in a base. So it happens to the best of us, let's put it that way. Great stasis there from Andrew Smith, taking out all the support units for the Terran army, but unfortunately it doesn't have any army to back it up with. The Templars do get a couple of nice storms off, but the siege tanks are going to maintain this position here for now at least, looking to push forward as well. The vessel did get repaired in order to provide vision, and nice EMP there. I believe that hit all three of the Arbiters in the perfect moment when they were all kind of stacked up together, despite the fact that they've been doing a good job of staying split up until this point. The push is coming in. We should be noted as well the fact that Andrew Smith did mine out of 3 bases already, is on 3 bases still, but now these probes are going to get taken out by the army unless they're careful. No, a lot of them do go down. Xiaoyi taking the economic advantage, and it should be noted that this command center was taken out at some point. I'm sorry for missing that. And though Andrew Smith does have 3 bases, being in this position is quite difficult for Protoss. You can't really engage against a Terran mech army when it contains you on the hill like this. It is quite difficult to move your way around this way to engage, and you definitely don't want to be doing it piecemeal either. Something that I imagine would be incredibly hard for AI to code for is how to engage from 2 fronts at the same time, how to route your armies when you're getting contained, or even recognizing the fact that you're contained. I don't think that that's something that we have in this situation. Another EMP hitting this Arbiter is going to ensure the fact that it doesn't have any spells, and even though this army did get thinned out quite a bit, I mean, there is still that 62 to 13 army supply difference, but still overall a great game. I would have loved to see Xiaoyi try to scout the other bases. Even sending just 1 vulture to some of these bases would have been a very major blow to the opponent. And Xiaoyi itself is actually mined out of all but 1 base. I would like to see it try to expand more on the map as well. And maybe in the process it would find out the fact that the Protoss has taken its base. I'm actually quite confident that this depot probably sees these probes, but Xiaoyi has not reacted to that situation quite yet. And interestingly enough, this has been cleared up some bit. There's some zealots running around, but I don't think that this is going to continue for much longer. At least I don't think it should. Then again, like I said earlier, Andrew Smith is on 3 bases against the 1 of Xiaoyi, so there is a bit of a timer here unless Xiaoyi manages to expand, and the army production is actually looking quite good for Andrew Smith here. Not able to retain much army, but is pushing the Terran consistently back. We're now back into the middle of the map, and that makes it a little bit easier for Protoss to get their army up in a ball. Unfortunately, it continues to lose. It looks like it just loses a macro round, and then it doesn't really ever ball up either. So it's constant trickle. It almost looks kind of like something you would see in LoL or Dota, and Dota, where you see like what they call creeps spawning and just being sent on a move at the enemy. Here, that's what it's looking like from the Protoss player. Not really caring about getting itself into a mass here, just being very aggressive. And to be fair, that's something that we saw Xiaoyi doing as well earlier in this game. The Protoss does finally clean up the forward units from the Terran player. And again, the production queue from the Protoss is looking way better than the Terran one at the moment, fueled by the fact that it has those 3 bases. There are some defensive mines here, and interestingly enough, it's actually this army that I think is continuing to mess with Xiaoyi. It's not able to leave its base, and the production that comes out this way is probably keeping a lot of the traps as well. There's a siege tank trap behind his barracks now. Even with the command center and SCVs gone, the siege tanks and army are not consistently leaving, and actually there is 1 SCV here. Finally, it moves out of the way, but it looks like it might be too little too late, because the Protoss is taking out a lot of workers now. It's now back into an economic lead, 50 workers to 20, and Xiaoyi is mined out. So it's actually brought its command center here from the main base, which is an interesting tactic, by the way. It's something that you do see Terrans do in desperation moments, but by the time it arrives there, it arrives to see the Nexus having warped in, the probes taking out the remaining SCVs. Now with no production, only 2 workers. Andrew Smith kind of coming back from what I thought was on the brink of defeat. Very nice comeback there from Andrew Smith in a very entertaining game as well. Unfortunately, it looks like Xiaoyi will fall here, as Andrew Smith has maintained its economic advantage. And yeah, there's not really much more that can be done in this case. I mean, the Arbiter is still going to go down. The stasis did take out some units here, but with no economy and no workers, Xiaoyi is not long for this world, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit so we can see the cleanup. or possibly the GG from Xiaoyi. Yeah, now we see the Protoss army making its way into the main base of the Terran, where the army was trapped for so long. Stasising the medic, that's cute. And yeah, that's GG. Well played by Andrew Smith, and better luck next time by Xiaoyi. This is the only worker, by the way, that's still left in the game. Is going to go down soon as well. Um, yeah, I really feel like just like a vulture here and a vulture here could have made all the difference for Xiaoyi, but of course, when your whole army is trapped back here, that is not good as well. And actually, why is the game continuing here? Is there... Oh, the command center, that's too funny. Yeah, the command center will go down to the cannons here. Doesn't even have the logic to escape, actually. Perhaps because of the fact that it may be still thinking of landing, but unfortunately it's not going to happen, and Xiaoyi does get eliminated. Moving on to the next game, we have... This is what Antigua Urion called another good one. We have Soren and Klett, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, spawning as the Red Terran in the bottom right of Moonglaive. And we have TscMoor, the R standing for random, spawning as the Protoss at 12 o'clock as the blue Protoss. So, PvT on this map, positional advantages are huge. If Terran gets contained on the high ground, it's very hard to engage, especially despite the fact that there's two ways going up and actually another way going out this way. It's quite possible to get a great contain as Terran, and with Protoss you get a little bit less of that benefit. But it is still there. Another thing that Terran has going forward on this map is the fact that siege tanks position here do a good job of defending the space. For example, if let's say Soren is put into a defensive position, a couple siege tanks here do help create kind of an avenue for you to push out. Scouting SCV and Scouting Probe meet here at the 6 o'clock position, kind of in the middle of the map, high-fiving on their way to their respective targets. We do see, quite interestingly actually, very late gas from Soren. Yeah, that's a gas at 15 or 16 is incredibly late in this matchup. Normally you would see it at 11, or you would see a command center at 15 perhaps, but in this case neither has been the choice. TscMoor in the meantime is going for a very standard opening here. One Zealot first to apply a little bit of pressure, and Cybernetics Core shortly thereafter. First Dragoon on the way as well. Very standard stuff from TscMoor. Looks like there's going to be a bunker. Yes, indeed. The bunker, maybe a bunker expand coming in here. That would be interesting to see. The Zealot is here now, though. The Marine in the bunker is going to scare it away. That's a good heads-up play from Soren Klett to get that defensive position set up. Perhaps I don't think you need two SCVs to be there already, but it would help with any run-by attempts in theory. If the Protoss does run by, it could be quite dangerous because of the fact that the factory is delayed. And actually, we're seeing an academy being added for the Terran player. Interesting stuff here. Possibly going for Comsat Station, or if it's Biomech, I would have expected to see more production at this time. The run in from the Protoss is here, but unfortunately, actually, no. I mean, with the fact that it took down those SCVs, that really contributed to the fact that it was able to have some success there, but unfortunately the Terran is going to hold on to the position. Looks like a first Vulture is out. We should not have mines yet, I don't believe. Siege Tank actually is the first upgrade that's coming in, and the Vulture does go down. That makes it a risky position again for the Terran players, who still hasn't expanded, by the way. So this is quite an interesting decision to go for bunker to cover for a 2-fac with early detection. It's definitely not a build you would see a human typically go for, and behind this, TscMoor has started their expansion. 2 gateways, soon to be 3, are going to be pumping Dragoons, and here's that high ground position that is quite good for maintaining map control here. Finally, the command center is going to be placed by the Terran player. It's okay for the Terran to be slightly economically behind the Protoss, especially if there's a lot of damage being done to the Dragoons in this way. Definitely don't want to wander into the siege tank range. As the Protoss player, you want to make sure that all your units are maximally healthy. They do take up a lot of supply. It can be actually very misleading when you have a lot of army, but a lot of it is injured or EMP'd or plagued. You think that you have a really massive scary ball, but it's actually when it's at half HP, it's a lot less scary when you're Protoss. The Protoss probe here looking like it was scouting for a third base from Soren, potentially. Still doing a decent job of maintaining this high ground position, but still sacrificing a lot of Dragoons. That is kind of troublesome. And normally you would want as the Protoss to be well more ahead in terms of army supply, but the army supplies are practically even at this point, which is always going to be a favor for the Terran player, or put the Terran player in a greater position of favor, let me put it that way. The expansion has finally come up for the Terran player. More gateways being added for the Protoss player. It looks like a third is being considered by TscMoor here. Unfortunately, does not have the minerals yet. Using the extra probes to mine, I guess. Continuing to apply a little bit of pressure and has climbed up in army supply a little bit, but mines now being laid defensively. Very nicely done by Soren here. The mines take out quite a number of zealots, and any engagement that TscMoor kind of over commits to, it's resetting how much it's working against it basically. Yeah, these engagements are not really netting all that many kills, and as the siege tank count climbs, the dragoon count has not been climbing behind it. Again, that's something that I say very frequently in these broadcasts, and something that Nightcat has referenced me saying already at least once, is the fact that dragoons are kind of like the backbone of the Protoss army in PvT, and in some degrees PvZ, PvP also. So losing your dragoons for basically no gain is a big no-no in PvT. You can easily get pushed very badly, and in this case it looked like it might have been actually worth it to stay in that situation, because there was no supporting army for the siege tanks. There was a number of zealots stacked on top of them, but siege tank count continues to climb, and the Protoss army is now behind in supply compared to the Terran army, which is a situation that I can just summarize as no bueno. You never want to be behind in supply against the Terran. The Terran army is usually way more cost effective than you are, and if you're constantly wandering into siege tank range, that is also no bueno as well. Fourth base is coming up for TscMoor. Maybe it can continue this intimidating presence on the high ground, which seems to be keeping Soren in check. Soren not looking to take a third base. Let's look at the main here. Supply depots are placed really inefficiently here, unfortunately, though. It does allow for better pathing of the army for getting in and out of the base, but unfortunately I don't think it's going to have much more room to add more depots soon, and that will be a problem because we're only at 132 supply. It's going to have to find a different place to add more supply depots, I believe. Probes being sent forward, I'm not sure why, and now let's see what the push is going to look like. This is going to be quite dangerous, as the Terran army, why does this pop-up keep up? Terran army is 30 supply ahead of the Protoss one. That makes it such that it's basically impossible for the Protoss army to stop this. Excuse me. 1 second. Sorry about that. The shuttles could have contributed here, but unfortunately there are Goliaths already here, and I believe that they do already have the range upgrade. No, they don't actually. Yes, they do. No, they don't. Sorry. Is that the range upgrade? Yeah, it is. So the Goliaths would have been able to handle the shells, and they are doing so nicely here. The push is making its way forward, and this is all because of the fact of how much army was hemorrhaged by TscMoor here. Cannons are not going to fare well against siege tanks. Are basically wasted money in this position. I would understand placing maybe 1 or 2 cannons in the middle line to hold off against vultures or harass, the same way that we see Stardust do. And even battle cruisers now from the Terran player. Interesting stuff here. Yeah, here's the physics lab, I think it's called. 1 starport battle cruisers to supplement the production of the Terran army, because you know why not, I guess, right? Extra production facility. Not that the Terran has all that many of those, only 4 factories that I can see here. Definitely not enough to be consistently pumping. For human players off 2-3 bases, you can often see in excess of 8 or 9 factories, closer to 10 even, depending on the timing that they're trying to hit. So 4 factories, definitely not enough, but with clean macro, not floating too many minerals actually. Worker count is at 59, which is a bit lower than optimal, but considering the fact that it has been on 2 bases for so long, it does make sense. And the main base of TscMoor looks like it's going to go down. There's not really much it can do in this situation. There are other bases on the map that are being held in. It looks like tech is being rebuilt. We do see Spinning Forge here with upgrades, Dragoons being produced out of these gateways, and there are 4 bases still mining worth against the 3 of Terran, soon to be 4. Well, actually the 4th one just finished now. Probe scouting this base is not going to find anything, but the big story here is the army from the Terran. 130 supply of army now. it's going to be incredibly tough to deal with Protoss, especially a Protoss that is going to lose all of its production facilities and tech in a short moment. Shuttles are in great number, but they are not dropping in really an optimal place. They kind of lifted and dropped for no reason, but the Dragoons are doing a decent job of pushing back. Siege tanks are on the low ground, but they're still getting good hits off. There's an SCV, I think. Was that an SCV repairing that battlecruiser? Because that's what it did seem like. So the shuttle play not quite working out the way that it was possibly intended to. I love the fact that this shuttle is chasing down this battlecruiser with a Dragoon inside. That's quite interesting. But unfortunately, as I said earlier, too little too late perhaps in this situation. As the push continues forward and is going to take out the main base of TscMoor, the expansion has been spotted by the SCV and a scan has gone down as well. By the way, I want to note how great it is that there is this kind of like mine trail here. It definitely helps in securing map control, but you want your mines to be a little bit more spread out around the middle of the map too. It grants you not just vision, but also security to any future expansion that you take. But in this case, might not be all that important, considering the fact that the main base is going down for TscMoor. TscMoor are still mining quite comfortably off of the 4 bases, but it's taken a while to recognize the fact that it was going to lose all those gateways. Thankfully, the tech has been replaced. Double spinning forges going now. 2 gateways here. Missing a Templar Archives to get more upgrades. Missing the Citadel to get that as well. Actually, no, the Templar Archives are here. My bad. Chobo is blind. I'm guessing that this is the Arbiter Tribunal that we're seeing here, and yeah, indeed that is going to be the case. It doesn't seem like the Terran has reprioritized attacking somewhere else quite as efficiently as you normally would want. A lot of times what you would see a Terran player do is, while their main push is destroying bases or the main of the Protoss, you only need to send out a couple of units, like maybe 2 tanks and 5 vultures to start taking out the other maps. I'm sorry, the other bases on the map. And that's something that we didn't see happening here, and that's allowed TscMoor a little bit more wiggle room. The shuttle play still not quite working out. The push is going to find its way to the 3rd and 4th bases here. It's going to be quite slow in getting there, though, it seems like, because of the fact that it has to siege on siege every time it engages against the Dragoon. But the Dragoons are still being lost, and the army supply has 100 supply difference here. It's going to be incredibly tough again for TscMoor to stop this Terran player. It is trying, though. The shuttles are dropping units here and there. Dragoons and shuttles, I'm not quite sure about that move. Normally you would see Zealots in there because you can fit 4 of them. You can only fit 2 Dragoons in a shuttle. And normally you drop them right on top of the siege tanks, but it looks like actually, I mean, Soren still seems to be kind of abnormally focused on this main base. Excuse me, it's not looking to really move out, and actually we're seeing some shuttle Dragoon Zealot harassment at the expansion here, and it should be noted that the worker count is quite low for both players now, 31 to 26. I don't think either player wants to be at that worker count, and this harass is doing way too much damage at this point. It's taking out the command center even. Soren has expanded, but the worker count is continuing to drop. We have 25 to 24 workers now, and the army just hasn't been able to decide what it wants to do next. I feel like it's confused. I feel like it doesn't expect the Protoss to have more than the original 2 bases that it started the game with. I guess the Terran is just not recognizing the fact that it needs to push these expansions, and that's keeping TscMoor in the game. I mean, the supply difference is 200 to 100. The worker count is low for both, and there's no mining whatsoever here for TscMoor, but the army count is catching up, 168 to 74. 168 is actually kind of an insane army count if you think about it. That's an army that you won't be able to readily replace, especially not with this low of a bank here, but it is a quite scary army to deal with. There's basically nothing in the game that can handle a 160 supply Terran army, and I think the only answer that could work in this situation is just whittling it down slowly. Now, it should be noted as well that Soren isn't really mining from its expansions either. This harassment is continuing. He's going to continue taking down workers. Big army actually here as well is going to possibly take down this command center, and this command center is not even mining anymore, so there is the potential to see a reversal in this situation simply because of the fact that so much army has been delayed here for so long. There was an attempt to save these bases, but unfortunately TscMoor is going to be able to take them down. And now there's no mining for Soren. 14 workers only. They're going down gradually one by one because they're mining this gas. And it's going to come down to whether the fact that it's going to be able to win with this army. It still does have double the army supply of TscMoor, who himself or itself has not been adding probes throughout this whole time, which is interesting considering the fact that we have seen banana brain. In fact, overproducing potentially probes in response to losing so many of them. Nice stasis there, taking 2 tanks and a Goliath. And being able to push back a little bit, it seems like, as a result of that stasis, does take down a tank, and of course every unit being taken down now is of huge benefit to TSU, who is mining against the Terran, who is not. Um, Battle cruisers now are thinking about engaging. That Dragoon does go down to mines, and there's still a lot of army trapped up here that is not committing to an attack. I really feel like this game could have been over a while ago if Soren's army did decide to make an aggressive move after taking out the main natural, but I guess maybe it's on tilt the way that a human would be. It's thinking, yo, noob, I took down your main and your nat, I'll leave the game, but TscMoor is like, nah, but I still got my 4 bases though. And as the army supplies, I mean, they continue to both go down consistently, right? It's still staying around a ratio of 1 to 2, but now Dragoons are parked on top of the stasis siege tanks. Those should go down. The army is not growing for the Terran at all, and the Protoss army is being rebuilt with the minerals that are coming in. So slowly but surely, the Protoss army is inching in closer to the supply of the Terran. And the Terran's army is continuing to go here. There's no target here, unfortunately. Nice Yamato there. Very funny stuff going on. These battle cruisers are basically the only army units that I see that are actively engaged against Protoss at this time. It's interesting that the battle cruisers know to go out and engage, but the rest of the army does not. Battle cruisers are actually almost going to clean that up, but no, the Dragoons do come out ahead. And yeah, looks like Arbiter is just scouting maybe. I was thinking maybe it was a recall, but I actually haven't seen an AI recall in a while. Yeah, I mean, I feel like TscMoor is slated to win this now that the army count has surpassed the Terran army count. The Terran army is just now finally deciding to move back. I sped it up a little bit to try to get to this point. But nothing of too much import is happening really. Now the shuttles are dropping zealots on the siege tanks, very nice. The army is going to go down and the main base is getting taken down slowly as well. So great comeback win from TscMoor, are definitely exciting. And yeah, I think that will conclude today's episode of the SSCAIT. I hope you all enjoyed watching. I do look forward to seeing you guys next week when Nightcat will be casting some more recommended replays. If you have any replays that you would like to recommend yourself, or if you would like to stop by and chat, ask any questions about the AI, again, the SSCAIT Discord link will be in the description below. And we do look forward to seeing you there. It's always very interesting and heartening to see new people coming in and trying to develop AI on their own. So with all that being said, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, wonderful year. Let's dream big. Let's say have a wonderful life. And yeah, stay healthy, stay happy, take care.